So I thought I'd talk to you today about some of the stuff that's been in the media this week, well, the last couple of weeks actually, about a lot of the sexual assaults that are going unreported and women coming out much later on, and, why it is that people feel unable to actually speak up when things kind of happen, and especially if it's in work environments or even in country towns, these sorts of things happen because, small communities or an environment where people feel that they don't actually have that sort of power to speak up, but it's exacerbated so much more if women are intoxicated in any way. And it really shouldn't be the case that that would impair somebody's, ability to know whether or not they wanted to have any sort of sexual interaction, right? But by our society standards, a lot of people tend to, give off the impression that somehow if you were intoxicated, well, then, maybe you did or didn't say things, maybe you don't remember, maybe you don't, know, maybe you... And so a lot of women just sort of seem to find that it's much more difficult, even though they feel that, their body was violated in a way that they weren't happy with, that they don't feel if they've had anything to drink or any other drug potentially, that they can say anything. And this is a really major issue for our society in general because, having a couple of drinks does not give anybody an excuse to say that they didn't understand what they were doing, or that they didn't recognize that maybe what they were doing was wrong or unwanted connection of some form. But the reason that women don't report is because they feel ashamed and embarrassed about the fact that they were intoxicated, and usually they blame themselves for the fact that they were, intoxicated. Therefore, maybe if they hadn't been intoxicated, this wouldn't have happened to them, because we have this perception, and I mean, there's a reasonable amount of truth to it, that our inhibitions are impacted by alcohol or other drugs. And so, maybe we would have been more forthright if we hadn't actually consumed anything. But, sexual assaults happen in many ways and different shapes and forms. And at the end of the day, men in this culture need to understand that unless they get an explicit yes, it's okay, then no, it's not. And I think we can't stress that enough, that, we talk in high schools, actually. I find a lot of high school students are much more aware of it, that if somebody's been drinking, that it's really not okay, unless there was some prearranged thing when they weren't drinking, that this was something that they were willing to engage in. And that it's really poor form with a lot of young people these days if you were to, be seen to be taking advantage of somebody when they were intoxicated. And I think that the more we can educate our young men that this is not an okay thing to do, and, that permeates through to the older members of our society, that women are entitled to actually feel safe in their own community, whether they're dressed in a way that, is potentially enhancing somebody else's perception of their attractiveness, is not an excuse. It doesn't give people a right to step past a certain boundary. And I think rather than asking whether or not a woman said no, maybe we should be asking whether or not she explicitly said yes. So maybe it's time for a yes movement of some sort, some way that, I know we talk about Me Too, but how about, yeah, I agreed. I agreed that this was something that I wanted to do. And unless you get my explicit agreement, then it's a no-go zone. All right. This isn't an easy topic. It raises lots of issues for many, many women who have found in varying forms they have had, their body imposed upon. And it doesn't matter what people say about how they were dressed, what they were wearing, where they were, what time of day it was. It doesn't give anybody an excuse to use some sort of power differential to take something that doesn't belong to them. If you need any support with regards to this, please make sure you reach out to your Rape Crisis Centre or some other form of support. I think it's time that we learned that unless there's a yes, then it's automatically no.